So the next day, my master and his daughter got on their huge horse. Glumdalclitch carried me inside a small box, which had air holes so that I could breathe. When we arrived at the market town, my master hired the largest room in the public house and placed me upon the table there. His daughter stayed close to me to make sure that nobody hurt me. I was told to speak in their language, pull out my sword, drink from a cup, and do other things to amuse the crowd. Only 30 people were allowed in to see me at one time. On that first day, everybody wanted to see me, and I was shown to over 350 people. My master's plan was so successful that he arranged to show me again on the next market day. I did not look forward to this at all. I was so tired with the journey and the entertainment that I could only walk and speak with difficulty for the next 3 days. Even when we were at home, neighbors and friends from all parts of the country came to look at me, and my master made me work hard to amuse them, so I had almost no rest. My master finally realized that he could make a fortune by showing me to people all over the country. So about 2 months after my arrival in Brobdingnag, we left the farm and started our journey to the capital. As before, Glumdalclitch came with us to take care of me. On the way, we stopped in many towns and villages so that I could be shown to people. At last, after a journey of nearly 5,000 kilometers, we arrived at the capital. Now I had to work even harder, as people came to look at me 10 times a day. Chapter 7. At the King's Palace. Although Glumdalclitch tried to make things as comfortable as possible for me, such an exhausting life was beginning to have a bad effect on my health. I was becoming thinner and thinner. When my master noticed this, he thought I would not live much longer. But it was clear that he wanted to make as much money out of me as he could. While he was thinking how to do this, he was asked to bring me to the palace. The Queen and her ladies had heard about me and wanted to see me. When we arrived in front of the Queen, I fell on my knees and begged to be allowed to kiss her foot. But she kindly held out her hand to me. I took her little finger in both my arms and put it very politely to my lips. She seemed very pleased with me, and finally she said, "Would you enjoy living here in the palace, do you think?" "Great Queen," I answered, "I must do what my master wants, but if I were free, I would want to spend my whole life obeying your orders." She immediately arranged to buy me from my master. He was delighted to receive a good price for me, especially as he felt sure I would not live longer than a month. I also begged the Queen to let Glumdalclitch stay with me, because she had always taken such good care of me. The Queen agreed, and Glumdalclitch could not hide her happiness. When my master had left the palace alone, the Queen said to me, "Why didn't you say goodbye to him? And why did you look at him so coldly?" "Madam, I must tell you," I replied. that since he found me, my master has used me as an easy way of making money for himself. He's made me work so hard that I feel tired and ill. He's sold me to you only because he thinks I'm going to die soon. But I feel better already, now that I belong to such a great and good queen." The queen was clearly surprised to hear such intelligent words from such a small creature, and decided to show me to her husband. When the king saw me, he thought at first that I must be a mechanical toy. However, when he heard my answers to his questions, he realized I must be alive, and he could not hide his astonishment. To discover what kind of animal I was, he sent for 3 of his cleverest professors. After looking at me carefully, they decided that I was a creature outside the laws of nature. I was much too small to climb their trees, or dig their fields, or kill and eat their animals. They could not understand where I had come from, or how I could possibly survive. And when I told them that in my country there were millions just like me, they did not believe me, but just smiled. However, the king was more intelligent than they were. After speaking to Glumdalclitch and questioning me again, he realized that my story must be true. They took very good care of me. The queen's workmen made a special bedroom for me. It was a wooden box with windows, a door, and 2 cupboards. The ceiling could be lifted off, so that Glumdalclitch could change my sheets and tidy my room. The workmen even made me 2 little chairs and a table, and a lock for the door, so that no rats could get in. The queen became so fond of me that she could not eat without me. My small table and chair were always placed on the dinner table near her left elbow, and Glumdalclitch stood near me in case I needed her help. I ate off tiny silver plates with silver knives and forks. But I never got used to seeing the queen eat. In one mouthful, she ate as much as 12 English farmers could eat in a whole meal. She drank from a cup as big as one of our barrels, and her knives were like huge swords. I was quite frightened of them. On Wednesday, which is a day of rest in Brobdingnag, like our Sunday, the king and queen always had dinner together, with their children, in the king's rooms. I was usually invited too. My little chair and table were at the king's left elbow. He enjoyed very much hearing me talk about England, our laws, our universities, our great buildings. He listened so politely that I perhaps talked a little too much about my dear country. In the end, he looked at me kindly, but could not stop himself laughing. He turned to one of his lords. "How amusing it is," he said to him, "that an insect like this should talk of such important matters. He thinks his country is so highly developed. But I suppose even tiny creatures like him have a hole in the ground that they call a home. They argue, they love, they fight, and they die, as we do. But of course, the poor little animals aren't on our level." I could not believe what I was hearing. He was laughing at my country, a country famous for its beautiful cities and palaces, its great kings and queens, its brave and honest people. However, there was nothing I could do about it, and I simply had to accept the situation. The worst problem I had at the palace was the Queen's dwarf. Until I arrived, he had always been the smallest person in the country. He was about 10 meters tall. As I was much smaller than him, he was very rude to me and behaved very badly, especially when nobody was looking. Once, he took a large bone from the table and stood it on the Queen's plate. Then he took me in both hands and pushed my legs into the top of the bone. I could not pull myself out, and had to stay there feeling and looking extremely stupid. When the Queen finally saw me, she could not stop herself laughing, but she was angry with the dwarf at the same time. In Brobdingnag there are large numbers of flies in summer, and these awful insects, each as big as an English bird, gave me no peace. The dwarf used to catch some in his hands and then let them out suddenly under my nose. He did this both to frighten me and amuse the Queen. I had to use my knife to cut them to pieces as they flew around me. Another time, the dwarf picked me up and dropped me quickly into a bowl of milk on the table. Luckily, I am a good swimmer, so I managed to keep my head out of the milk. As soon as Glumdalclitch saw I was in danger, she ran from the other side of the room to rescue me. I was not hurt, but this time the dwarf was sent away from the palace as a punishment. I was very pleased. I would now like to describe Brobdingnag. The people who draw our European maps think there is nothing but sea between Japan and America, but they are wrong. Brobdingnag is quite a large country, joined onto Northwest America, but separated from the rest of America by high mountains. It is about 10,000 kilometers long and from 5 to 8,000 wide. The sea around it is so rough, and there are so many rocks in the water that no large ships can land on any of the beaches. This means that the people of Brobdingnag do not normally have visitors from other parts of the world. There are 51 cities and a large number of towns and villages. The capital stands on both sides of a river and has more than 80,000 houses. It covers 340 square kilometers. The King's Palace covers about 11 square kilometers. The main rooms are 80 meters high. The palace kitchen is huge. If I described it, with its great pots on the fire and the mountains of food on the tables, perhaps you would not believe me. Travellers are often accused of not telling the truth when they return. To avoid this happening to me, I am being careful to describe what I saw as exactly and carefully as possible. Chapter 8. More Adventures in Brobdingnag. Because I was so small, I had several dangerous accidents during my stay at the palace. One day, Glumdalclitch put me down on the grass in the palace garden while she went for a walk with some of the Queen's ladies. A small white dog, which belonged to one of the gardeners, appeared, and seemed very interested in me. He took me in his mouth and carried me to his master. Luckily, he had been well trained and did not try to bite me, so I was not hurt. One day, the Queen said to me, "It would be good for your health to do some rowing or sailing. What do you think? Would you like me to arrange it for you?" "Madam," I answered, "I'd love to row or sail a little every day. But where can we find a boat that's small enough?" "Leave that to me," she replied, and called for her workmen. She ordered them to make a tiny boat with sails. They also made a wooden container, about 100 meters long, 17 meters wide, and 3 meters deep. This container was filled with water, and I was carefully placed in my boat on the water. Every day I used to row or sail there, while the Queen and her ladies watched. There was no wind, of course, but the ladies blew hard to move my boat along. I nearly lost my life again when a lady picked me up to put me in the boat. She was not careful enough and dropped me. With horror, I felt myself falling through the air. But instead of crashing to the ground, I was caught by my trousers on a pin in her clothes. I had to stay there without moving a finger until Glumdalclitch came running to rescue me. But the greatest danger to me in Brobdingnag came from a monkey. One day, Glumdalclitch left me alone in her bedroom while she visited some of the ladies. It was a warm day, and her window was open. I was in the box which I used as my bedroom, with the door open. Suddenly, I heard the noise of an animal jumping through the window, and immediately I hid at the back of my box. The monkey, which appeared huge to me, very soon discovered my hiding place. He picked me up and held me close to him like a baby. When he heard someone opening the bedroom door, he jumped out of the window and ran onto the roof. I thought I had never been in such great danger. He was running on 3 legs and holding me in the 4th. At any moment he could let me fall, and we were at least 300 meters above the ground. I could hear a lot of shouting in the palace. The servants had realized what was happening and brought ladders to climb up onto the roof. Glumdalclitch was crying, and hundreds of people were watching from the garden. Meanwhile, the monkey was sitting calmly on top of the roof. He was taking food from his mouth and trying to push it into my mouth. He still seemed to think I was his baby. I suppose it was an amusing sight for the crowd below, but I was in terrible fear of falling. Finally, several servants climbed on the roof, and as they came nearer, the monkey put me down and ran away. I was rescued and brought down to the ground. I had to stay in bed for 2 weeks after this, before I felt well enough to meet people again. The monkey was caught and killed. When I next saw the king, he asked me about this experience. "How did you feel," he said, "when the monkey was holding you up on the roof?" "Sir," I replied bravely, "I was afraid, that's true. But next time an animal like that attacks me, I shall not hesitate. I'll pull out my sword like this," and I showed him what I would do, "and give the creature such a wound that it will never come near me again." But while I waved my tiny sword in the air, the king and his lords laughed loudly.